I'm so excited for this conversation. I did all the prep this morning, so it's fresh in the mind, man. I know we haven't met in person, but Ryan Warner, I've been hosting this podcast over 4 years now. I'm based out of Chicago, but I grew up in the Quad Cities, so yeah. I know you used to be out of Davenport, so
Yeah, I used to be there. Just talked recently to Monty Cox, the big fight promoter
yeah.
over there for all the UFC guys. He's writing a book and he's putting a blurb in there and had to ask some questions. So just talked to him the other day and saw that Jen Fulver's getting inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, which is awesome and overdue.
Yeah.
So super happy for him as well.
So were you going to Militich during that era?
Yeah, so I moved over there in 2001 and I walked into a gym just to lift and work out, and the gal behind the desk said, "Are you Nick?" And I said, "Well, how do you know who I am?" And she said, "My boyfriend's Jason Black." And I said, "Well, what's Blackie up to?" And, "Oh, he's downstairs. They roll downstairs." And I said, "I don't even know what that means, but I'm in." So I went down there and started. They taught me jujitsu, and I worked out with those guys for 7 or 8 years pretty religiously. I was part of that whole from 2001 to about 2008. I could almost tell you the day that our son was born. Or 2009, I guess it would have been that's when the grappling career stopped after that. So just from a time management standpoint.
And now that you say that, I remember seeing you there a few times because I graduated Geneseo in 07.
Okay.
A distant cousin of mine is Steve Rusk.
Yeah, I know Rusk well.
What an animal, right?
Unbelievable.
So tough. So he invited us down there. And so my brother and I went maybe a couple months of just kind of rolling, just got out of wrestling, seeing what's going on. And that was an interesting room, right? You had legit guys fighting on the UFC, rolling with guys just common guys, off the street. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. It seems like another lifetime ago, but it was from Jeremy Horn to Dave Monet, of course, Jason Black and Jens Pulver and Matt Hughes, and then Tim Sylvia had moved there right before I did, or right after, one of the two, and right before, I believe. And all these guys that were just there for a common goal to work out and train with some of the best guys. And I just happened to stumble into it off of a wrestling career and waddle in on my knees, and they took me in. Man, Pat's been great to me, and that whole group of people have nothing but been very gracious to me. And I learned jiu-jitsu and grappled with some of the best in the world and learned from some of the best in the world for a long time. And it was fun. I grappled in a lot of big tournaments in the Abu Dhabi, the World Championships. That was in 2007.
You went to Abu Dhabi. Was that the year Steve went?
Yeah, Steve and I and his wife went. Yeah, we were supposed to be these Iowa wrestlers that were supposed to knock off the Brazilians, but I lost to this European guy, champion from Poland or something, and nobody spoke English, and I didn't know whether I won or lost. We do like a 15-minute roll, and they kind of look around and they raise his hand. Same thing happened for Rusk, but they raised Rusk's hand. He's like, "I don't know why I won." I was like, "I don't know why I lost." I was like, "Either way, we're good." So it was fun. It happened to be in Trenton, New Jersey that year, of course, post 9/11, and so nobody was going over to Abu Dhabi, but they were all the sheiks and all the people were over there. It was an interesting event for sure, but it was fun.
It's probably so much bigger now. Last year it was in Vegas, and I think it was 15,000 some people sold out. Was it big then?
It was like an ice arena or something, smaller, didn't hold a ton of people, maybe a couple thousand people, but it was pretty busy. But I felt like you had to know about it and you had to be looking for it. I don't know.
That was during the era when even mentioning UFC to a normal person was kind of like, I always say it's kind of like mentioning porn. It's like a dark art. No one even talked about UFC back then. It was maybe I can't remember when Hughes fought Gracie. That was a big one. And I remember that maybe like 06. Mm-hmm. That was like the first one we all got, like the high school guys bought a pay-per-view together for. So that was kind of when it was coming out. But even before that, we would see these videos of Militich fighting, and he wore the briefs with the Iowa logo on it. And you were like, what is this like barbaric sport? It's so crazy. It all happened in the Quad Cities.
It is, and you know what I think you realize is that it did have a really kind of negative connotation in like this barbaric sport, but when you really realize it, and now where it's come in the last 15 years or more, is it it is truly an art skill set. Like I talk to people all the time. We still grapple sometimes. I'm getting old, out of shape now, but like you still roll around and grapple, and I describe it as like chess, like a slow paced chess with a boa constrictor. Like you just kind of roll, and you're kind of flowy, and it's a different pace than wrestling. Like wrestling is just smash, smash, smash in your face for 7 minutes. Jiu-jitsu is like I'm gonna roll you around, and then I'm gonna, as soon as I feel it, it's gonna sink in, and it's gonna, and it's
Yeah.
over. It's like, so it's just a completely different tempo, and it's a completely different mindset. But man, the transition from wrestling to jiu-jitsu was awesome, and happen to be in the greatest gym in the world at the time was just stumbled into that.
Yeah, it's an interesting art form. I don't roll all the time, but every once in a while I'll get a wild hair and go for like a month, and then I'm just like, I don't have the time. But it is crazy how
Mm-hmm.
you'll go to a class and you go with a guy who looks like a 45-year-old mathematician, but he's a brown belt, and then you're trying to like go, and he'll just sit there and take it and then tap you up maybe 12 times within a minute, and you just can't believe like it's that effective. It's so frustrating, humbling, and I guess if you're really strong, inspiring, but mainly just frustrating.
Well, and I think yeah, that's true, but I I think that it's kind of like everybody that quits doing jujitsu, myself included, says it's because they don't have time to do it. And the reason I think they say that is because it's such an addictive sport. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so addictive, man. You go in there, and as soon as you learn one setup or one sweep or one counter, you like can't wait to get back to roll and put somebody's head in that same spot and bait that move and switch, and then here we go, it's gonna do it, and then sink it in. And it's so addictive that you either have to walk away from it and not do it, or if you're in it, it's like you want to go 3 nights a week, and your wife
Right.
hates you, and
Right.
so
Right. Well, and it's I know this is a wrestling podcast, but I do love all forms of grappling. And one of the cooler things I found just researching you is one of your dreams, and maybe you've already done this, is that you wanted to create a DVD series for high school coaches if they have a double amputee, a single amputee. Have you done that?
I have not, and I have. If this is the springboard to help it happen, I would be super happy. It comes in waves, right? Like everything does, and I'll get contacted, especially right after college, and when everybody is familiar with what I did and where I did it at, and they see this. Um, they hit me up and ask me those things, and I'll talk to coaches and I'll do those things. But uh, as recently as like I don't know, maybe 5 or less years ago, I got on this kick again. I was like, man, these coaches keep hitting me up, and they keep saying, hey, I have this kid that walked into my room that's missing an arm or a leg or any number of things. And do you have any technique you can help him with? Man, it's like impossible, right? Because like I need to see them. Like I need to watch them walk onto the mat. I need to see what they do. I need to see what they don't do, or what they don't have and what they do have. And and then I could come up with some stuff. But what you're referring to is what I think is really needed. And I've reached out to Rudis, and I've reached out to some others that are I don't make videos, right? But uh, I said, let me help organize this in some way. Like, let's get Robles or somebody who's a high level hip disc articulation on one side. Let's get a bilateral below the knee, somebody like myself. Let's get somebody who's one leg below. Let's get Doyle Trout, one leg above the knee, right? That's different than Robles, who's one leg through the hip on one side, right? That's a different stance. What about a kid with one arm? What about a kid that, I don't know. And all these coaches just want a resource. They just want to, we know all coaches don't know everything, right? Like, but back in the day, you'd buy the Cradle series by this guy or this outside single by this group of guys, and the coach would study it, and then he would go into the room and he would teach it. He wasn't the master at the outside single or the low John Smith low single, but he could learn it from DVD and he could teach it to these kids. There's no resource like that when a kid walks into a wrestling room with one leg or no leg. The beauty I had was my high school coach and my little kid youth coaches. You know, we're small town Iowa, and they just said, "Come on in, we'll let everybody get beat up." And they just let me come in, and they tried to work through it. That's a lot to ask every coach, you know, they're, especially as clubs are bigger and rooms are bigger, and it's easy to coach the really good kids. Like, give these coaches a resource that in their off time they can be like, oh, how am I going to help little Johnny here that's missing a leg? Like, what's out there? Wow, you know, and most of the time they just Google like amputee wrestler, and my name pops up, and they find me on the internet somewhere and message me, and then we have a conversation. But no, that project has not taken off. I've talked to a few different people, but it's a definite needed thing, because I think this sport is for everybody, as they say. You know, fat, skinny, tall, short, legs, no legs, blind, deaf, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's for everybody, and everybody gets something out of it. So
that's the best part about it, right? Like, what other sport can so many people win at? It's just so wild to think about. And I have some ideas for you. I do some filming, and there's a huge YouTube show out in Des Moines. They're called Stalemates. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but fantastic. And but either way, I think I have some ideas and at least how we could film it, and then whoever wants to distribute it, you know, that's up to you. But I do think that's such a valuable resource, because that is that, again, that's what makes wrestling great, is the fact that everyone can do it. And such a smart idea to have it broken down by, like you said, guys like Robles, guys like yourself. Unless you're in that world, you don't think about the nuances of technique for someone who's in a different situation like that, like the one, you know, 2 legs, 1 leg, whatever. So I was inspired to hear your idea, and I want to see if, you know, when the timing's right to make it happen, because I think it'd be really cool.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that'd be great. So when you think about your technique and some of the big turning points in your life, the people who know your story, you know, 18 months old, you had a severe case of meningitis and both of your legs are amputated. You start wrestling in 3rd grade and kind of slowly make your way through the ranks. One of the things that was noticed or interesting to me was that you noticed from an early age, 3rd grade on, that when you're wrestling, there's like an extra level of attention on your matches. And I was just curious, like, how did you deal with that? Was it something that excited you, or was it like a negative?
No, I think I'm this way today, and about everything I do, I'm pretty oblivious to everybody around me. And I think that's kind of a bad thing when it comes to professional work, life, home balance. Like, I have blinders on and I take care of what I need to take care of. And I'm pretty focused on what I'm doing. But I really don't care about what other people think or are doing. I expect people who I'm working with or dealing with to operate at a high level. But outside of that, whatever their opinion of me, I have this ability to separate it out. But yeah, no, when I'd walk on the mat, you knew everybody was watching. You could feel it. There'd be, you know, a few Colfax fans in the stands, and half the gym is clapping. You know, they don't know they don't know me, and they just start clapping because the kid with no legs won, which is kind of not. It's very nice, right? But like, it doesn't really translate to much. But I got a lot of pats on the head when I'd lose, because honestly, the reality is anybody who knew me growing up and anybody who watched me wrestle, and including all my coaches and parents, my mom tells my kids now, she's like, oh, we just used to wish Nick would get pinned in the first period, so it wasn't so terrible to watch all 3 periods. You know, I lost every single match. Like, I lost every single match as a youth wrestler, and even in through junior high and into high school. I think freshman and sophomore year, I maybe won 4 matches combined, varsity matches.
So what the heck happened? How did you turn the corner?
Well, you know, you've seen the cartoon where the guy's digging in the hole and he's digging through, right? And he's just about to get to the gold or whatever the reward is, and he stops and he sits down. And I've been digging this long ways, and I'm tired and I'm done. I had coaches around me that didn't let me stop digging. I had coaches around me and my parents and my brother that were like, hey, go do it, go get after it. And when you retired, you take a break. Never quit the sport. I never took a year off. I never walked away from the sport ever. But I also didn't wrestle year round like kids do nowadays. And so maybe if that was the case, I would have walked away from it before I got there. But I think what it means is I kept digging and I kept working, and there would be a coach or a teammate or somebody in the room that would say, hey, you should try this. Okay, you should try this. I remember some of these distinctly. Like when I changed my stance. So first of all, like I can't bridge, right? Like I can't push with my feet off my head to bridge. There's no. So if I went to my back, chances are I was getting pinned, right? Like how are you getting off your back? Like I can't bridge. Like, so first thing I had to do is get really strong. So I lifted a lot. I grew up pig farming a lot and working in baling hay and doing all the things that Iowa kids do. And I got really strong, like in a way that wasn't like weight room strong. And I was in the weight room a fair amount, a lot, but really didn't commit to it till probably my sophomore, junior summer for the weight room. But I was always working outdoors and working, for the local pig farmers and baling hay, do those things. So I was getting stronger. And as soon as I figured out how to get my neck stronger, okay, well now I can bridge from my butt to my neck and I can lock that up and that can be pretty strong. But people figure that out and they can pin you. So as soon as I figured out how to get out of a front headlock, right? So I'm on my knees and on my hands, right? Like it's a simple front headlock, and every high school kid learns how to, block and spin, drill. That's what they drill every day in practice, right? Spin, block, spin drills. Like so, as soon as they figured out how to shift and throw me the side, they scored takedown after takedown, and so first I figured out the day I figured out how to stay out of a front headlock was a big day. The day I figured out on bottom, okay, so now I start on bottom. The day I figured out that if I can get somebody's hand, my elbows can get in and I can beat my elbow inside and their hand lands to the outside and I can grab a hold of this hand that's on this outside, I'm out. As soon as I figured that out, I was like, man, there's nobody that can ride me now. Like I can get out from anybody. Like I don't care what position I'm in, I'm moving. They put their hand, I can beat my elbow in here. If I can dig this elbow in, as soon as they go to the outside, I'm out. Okay. So I figured out how to get out of the front headlock. I figured out how to get out from the bottom, and then just genetically, I'm tall. My family's tall, right? My brother's 6'6", 6'5", 6'6". He was a college basketball player. My dad's 6'5". My mom's 5'8". Like I'd be a tall kid, so therefore my arms are really long. So on top, well, what am I going to do? And as soon as I figured out my cradle, I have 3 moves, right? Like I have a short sit. I have a ankle pick. I figured out that came later. My takedown. Normally my takedowns were kind of dive ins and terrible. But as soon as I figured out how to ankle pick people and how to pin people, well, that's when it all turns around, right? And you combine that with some strength, but the reality was I was terrible. I lost all the time, and you just don't quit. So
the ankle pick had to be big because of the length. When was that?
So late in high school and kind of more perfected in college. When I was a freshman at Simpson, Corey Christensen was a senior, I believe. Yeah, he was a senior, and that dude was a wealth of knowledge for me. He kind of would beat me up during the day during practice, just not on a mean way, but he'd kick my butt for quite a while. And then he took it on himself for some reason, and I don't even know what it is, but he took it on himself to be like, I don't know if it was a puzzle for him or what. He'd be like, why don't you try this? Well, you don't do that. That's dumb. Don't do that. Grab here instead of here. Oh, okay. And like these, so like my takedown, which is really simple, which is like, I don't know, it works and it's 0 effort. And my right arm, I grab their left wrist right? So I'm reaching out. I have a hold of their left wrist, and I pull the left wrist, just kind of pop it down and pull it down to the ground, and their left foot steps every single time. Like if you pull somebody's left wrist towards the ground, their left foot steps forward to catch them. So I figured out that if I could grab a hold of this left wrist, pull it down, and as soon as they were in midair stepping, I turned my hand from this way to thumb down, and I swept out, and I brought them forward, swept out, and that foot's right there, and they just sit right on their butt every single time.
So would you grab it with the right hand or the foot with
no.
the right hand or the left hand?
No, right hand always. Right hand to their left hand.
Near wrist, yep.
Snap it. Pull it down, and as soon as they step, I let go of the wrist, and I turn my hand this way and cup their heel. My thumb's right on the mat.
Okay.
My thumb's right on the mat, and it just goes, and they will sit right on their butt. So back to the very beginning of this conversation, the reason that Monty Cox was calling me to talk about this book is he's talking about these people that were in the room that weren't fighters, that were doing a bunch of stuff, and he's telling the story. You'll read it in this book about Laverne Clark, who was like a professional boxer, fighter, kind of really tough dude, very nice, but just very tough and very rough guy. And we were doing takedowns on Monday nights, and he said he was coming in to wrestle me, and I walk out on the mat, and he's like, no, man, I'm here to get better with the best in the world, you know. And Pat would do that. He would send people like, hey, go try and wrestle with this poor old man. And it was like this guy we called Coach, who was like the strongest dude in the room, who was like 60 years old, who would crush you, you know. Or hey, go wrestle our poor friend here, Nick, who's missing his legs. And they're like, okay. And then, you know, you'd put the hammer on him, and it was kind of fun for Pat to watch. But so this Laverne was like, man, I'm here to wrestle the best in the world, man. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want, you know, very, very nice, but like very like, I said, no, we're okay. We're good, man. Let's wrestle. Let's go. We're takedowns. I don't know this guy. I've never met him before. Big, tall, thin athlete, just strong boxer guy, good wrestler too. And he's like, finally I got through, and he's like, fine, man, no mercy, man. I slapped hands, and I heel picked him in like 2 seconds, and everybody in the gym starts laughing, and they're just dying. I'm like, no mercy, Laverne. You know, it's pretty funny, you know. Like the poor guy had no clue what was happening. He had no clue what he was in for. And but the day I learned that heel pick was like, you know, getting into a front headlock, same thing. Like it's all wrestling fundamentals, right? The best way to stay off your back is then to go to your back. The best way to get out of a front headlock is not be in a front headlock, you know,
right.
All of those things. So like that allowed me, and I think it was maybe Corey, or maybe it was Coach Peterson, that suggested that I come upright more, bring my chest upright more. Don't be so low to the ground, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of a right knee leg lead. And so I always reach with my left hand, and my right hand was kind of down near the mat and kind of reaching for near wrist often. So, but those types of things, you figure out those little puzzle pieces, and next thing you know, you're off your back. So now you're wrestling 3 periods. You're figuring out, when I get in these bad positions, that's not the end of it. The front headlock doesn't mean I'm getting taken down every time. And when I'm on top, man, I have a chance of pinning anybody in the country. And, you know, including, I remember wrestling Kelsey Anderson my junior year. And man, I locked up that cradle on top, and I thought, here we go. This is my only chance. I was probably down like 13-0 at this point.
What happened?
I got tech balled like everybody else in the world.
No, with the cradle though, you had it locked up.
No,
what
I locked it up, and I was like, here we go. And my coaches are all perked up, like, oh, this is gonna be good. And then he straightened his leg out, and that was it. It was pretty terrible. But I really thought so you got two or three things. Like I figured out how to get stronger. My grip strength is really strong. Like that is that is something that allowed me to not get away with bad things, but allowed me to, like, when I lock up on somebody's wrist, like I'm going to keep it until I give it back.
And you breezed through this earlier, but you're big on training wrestling without wrestling. And you mentioned the pig farming. You know, I have no experience with this, but I listened to an interview you did with Kyle Klingman, and you were like picking up 300 pigs a day, you said, at this job, like all summer, all day, just picking up pigs.
Yeah. So
Can you imagine?
you'd wean these like 60-pound pigs. And so I'm in high school, right? And the farmer who actually I ran into a year or so after the national tournament, and I remember running into him saying, "Hey, I don't know if I've thanked you enough, but like all of these pigs that I had to lift, like I remember you'd lift these big, you wean them. So they're in two different pens and they're like running around. And they're like, okay, well, so first, when they're smaller, you cut teeth and tails and castrate and do all that stuff. And then as they get older, we're sorting pigs to put them in for a truck to come pick them up. And it's a small time farm. It's not a big confinement, big automated anything. It is this guy and another guy, kid, that have to pick these up. Oh, that one's too small, put them over here. This one's too big, put them over here. Or we'd take them and we'd have a stock rack in the back of the truck, and I'd be in the back of the truck, and I'd have to pick every one of them up by their back legs, and the farmer would put shots in and give them vaccines or whatever they were doing, and then we'd hand them down. And those days, besides shoveling manure and besides doing all that stuff, but like moving huts and pulling rebar stakes out and those things. Besides that stuff, like I remember going home from those days and getting in the shower to wash my hair, and your hands cramp up and you can't move them. You're like, oh my gosh, my forearms hurt so bad, because you can't open and close your hands. And by accident, this turns out to be one of the greatest assets that I had, was this ability to grab a hold of a shaking pig as it's kicking and holding it up and trying to grab another one as it's kicking, and you're
That's like the perfect functional workout. The thing's moving, it's heavy, and you got to hold on to it for dear life. Like that is, you can't.
Or the guy's gonna yell at you, or he's gonna scream at you. So,
I'm thinking the pig will attack you. They don't bite you or anything like that.
No. They're just a little pig. No. They're like, no. So it was a accidental, like kind of happy accident or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that is honestly, you fast forward now to where I'm at in my life, and I have 3 boys, and we have all these non-wrestling functional things at our house. Slack line in the backyard between trees, we have a wrestling room in the basement, but we wrestle down there, real practice a couple times a year, and that's just getting ready for little kid state stuff. Not like we're not going down there grinding, 3 nights a week in the house, but trampolines and all these different things that chin-up bars that are just out there, like different things to get them to work out or build balance or build strength without, going to the gym. But
yeah,
more just from a fun aspect and,
Well, I think it's cool that you're doing that, but you're also kind of recreating it for your kids so they get some of that advantage without, spending all day on a pig farm. I wanted to ask about this person before we get into some of the big matches. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Is it Gary Cheneg? Cheney?
Cheney?
Yeah,
Gary
Cheney.
The guy who's Cheney, the guy who's had made my legs for 22 years before I made mine. That gentleman, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So I understand that you said he was so important to you as a kid and throughout your life that almost like a second father. So tell us about that relationship.
Yeah, so Gary is an amazing guy. He just recently retired. I used to, literally from this office where I'm sitting now, I used to work around the corner in another office in the same building where we do work. But so when you're 2 years old and you're 18 months old and you lose your leg, ultimately your parents have control of everything, right? Because I don't know about it and I don't know anything. So ultimately, Gary took care of my parents when they come with this child that's missing his legs and says, hey, can you help us? And Gary says, yeah, we can do that. And his brother owned this company for a number of years, and he kind of took me and took my parents under his wing, or just kind of as a patient. And man, he allowed me to have this life that was really unlimited. He would kind of same model as all my coaches later in life, and my parents from birth, was like, no excuses. What do you want to do? You can do anything you want. We'll make you a set of prosthetic limbs. That's not hard to do. When they break, I'll fix them. When you need new ones and you grow, we'll make new ones. But ultimately not a big deal. Let's move on. And so, yeah, so he's made my leg since I was 2 years old. And then after college, I called him up and I said, hey, any chance I could come work for your company? And he again said, absolutely. And I came and went to work for their company, and that's kind of where I'm
Wow.
ultimately at now. So yeah, unbelievable guy, unbelievable family. And it's kind of what you do, right? Like it was his job, right, to build limbs, and the kid just happens to come in with his parents. But I mean, I do it now in my professional work, but like, you're dealing with parents, like, and there's no important commodity in the world than your children. And so these parents are really concerned about their kids, and like, they're often not often, they're always in a not perfect situation if they're seeing us,
Right.
like they're missing something. Something's happened.
It's amazing how you got into your career in the first place, because it just from some articles, it looks like you were going to be a park ranger. So you're a big
Yep.
outdoorsman. You go on the Today Show, which I want to ask
Mm-hmm.
you about, and you start to get some calls from people who are inspired by your message. What happened after that Today Show aired?
Yeah, so it was either right before the Today Show or right after. It was from a USA Today article that was written that I still don't know if this person exists. His name's Chris, I believe, from Texas, and he was in a car wreck and lost a leg and was maybe going to lose another one, and he didn't know didn't know what he was doing. Right, like he's like, I'm 19 years old and I'm in this bed, and I read this article about this kid that just won a national title that doesn't have legs, and apparently that's what I'm going to look like. Like, how does this work? And so we talked a handful of times um, over the course of a couple weeks, and it was kind of more like he asked really what I know now in my professional career, but at that time, when I'm 21-year-old college kid, I thought were really silly questions. We're like, well, how do you take a shower? I don't know. I just walk on my knees and take a shower. What do you mean? How do you take it? What do yeah, logical questions for a 19-year-old, but like, what do girls think? Like, do you have a girlfriend, or like, how's that work? Like, he asked what type of underwear I wore, and I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I wear normal underwear. What do you mean? But it was like when you have your world flipped upside down at 19 years old, and you're you're sitting in this bed and you're missing both legs. Now, as at where I'm at now in my life at 40, whatever I am, and making limbs from you, I noticed that these are all very normal questions. But when I was 21 years old, I didn't have a lot of time for them. I was kind of like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. You're fine. You need to get over this and move on. Like, this is not a big deal. Like, go to your physical therapy, do your work, do the work. I don't, what do you mean? Like, well, so what, they cut the other leg off? Like, who cares? You'll be fine. It might be better to have both of them gone. Like, I like not having both legs. Like, but at the time, he was just reaching out, trying to find somebody that he could draw some similarities to, that could answer some of his real world questions. And I happened to be that person. But ultimately, I got off the phone with him one night, and I remember looking at Song and saying, man, I feel like I need to make that guy's legs. Like, he needs to see that this isn't a big deal. Like, he needs to see that there are, you do things different, but you do whatever you want, and
I love how
so that,
direct you were about it, though. Just like no excuses, like not even thinking about it moving forward, like not even
yeah,
worrying about it.
yeah, and I'm still that way with patients here. Obviously you got to be a little more professional, and you got to be a little more understanding. But the one thing I don't do very well is sympathy. Like, I mean, like, I don't know. There's bad situations, but I feel like that never inspires moving forward. That sticks you where you're at, and you're thinking about where you're at instead of thinking about where you're going. And so I say, oh yeah, that's a bad deal. Like, shoot, man, I just talked to a kid, actually the aunt of a kid in the Quad Cities, 21 years old, and tangled with a train and lost one arm, left arm below the elbow, left arm or left leg above the knee. Like, man, that's a bad deal. That's a bad deal. Like, right? Like, okay, let's put this together. Let's figure out where we're going. Let's put it together. And maybe easier said than done, but sitting there talking about how bad it is, or how devastating that is, or how terrible luck you had, or man, I wish I wouldn't have been there that night, or I wish I wouldn't have done that. Those things are, time sucks and energy sucks in my world.
Well, your mental toughness is evident, and I think one match that really exhibits that to me is state your senior year, first round against
Mm-hmm.
#1 seed Don Bosco. You break your arm in the match and you still go on to win, but just walk us through that match, because that's one everyone talks about.
Yeah, so that's like that's a that's a no excuses world, right? You make it to the state tournament, you're not supposed to be there, meaning like I was doing pretty good my senior year, but like, I get in because we go to section at that time, it's sectionals and then districts, and I do pretty well, um, well enough to qualify, right? And then you get drawn the Don Bosco, who's the state second place runner up, whatever he was, the year before, and if you're watching the Iowa State tournament now, Don Bosco hasn't missed a beat. They're still hammering people. Yeah.
Seriously.
Uh, so yeah, so you get this draw that's not very good, not very favorable for the kid from Colfax who's not supposed to do much. But you're still there and you're going to go out there and work. And that was the coaches and behind me and around me that were like, well, let's go do work. And you go out there and bad things happen. I think that was my only injury timeout I took in all of high school. And I remember it like, shoot, that hurt. And I've broken some wrists and bones and stuff growing up, just being a kid screwing around.
So what was the
And
situation? Like, what were
so
you winning,
yeah,
losing, or?
I know it was like 30 seconds into the match. He snapped my head. I stuck my arm out and he spun and he did something. I don't know what happened, but it hit my wrist on this left side and it cracked. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He got the takedown and I called injury timeout. And it was like 30 seconds into the match. And I called I said, oh, my coach has come out like, oh, what's that? And I was like, it's bad. It's broken. I was like, shit, like, this is not good. I said, well, we just tape it up. Just tape it up and let's keep going. And the trainer comes running out and she put a wrap of pre-wrap and she put like a wrap or two of tape around my wrist, like you would for like, hey, it gives me a little extra grip. Like, as she goes running off the mat, and I was like, oh, well, here this goes. And I couldn't bend it. I remember, I think, if I remember right, and I don't know if this is accurate, so I shouldn't even probably say it, but I believe Mike Allen was the official for that match. And I remember like having a couple injury timeouts, like, and I'd yell and he'd stop the match and he would, okay, we gotta. And so, yeah, I remember at some point, the official, whoever it was, looked at my high school coach and we were out of injury timeout. And he's like, it's okay. Just take 30 here and tape it up good. We're good. He's going to be fine. And, but I think I went on to, I don't know what this score, I feel like most wrestlers know every match and every score of every match and every person they've ever wrestled. I'm not that type of guy, but, I think I beat him pretty handily. I think it was 10-4 maybe, or something like that. I remember after just doing work, one arm head up, just driving across and getting on top, hooking my nose, reaching across with one arm, trying to across his body, trying to grab and
Bro, you're so
just
savage. Oh
just
my God.
I was just trying to do anything to dominate every position because I knew as soon as I gave up position, it was gonna, it wasn't good. So yeah, then you go on to beat him and win the next round, and we taped it up better before the next round, but it's just what you did. It wasn't anything that was a big deal, honestly. I didn't feel like at the time it was that big of a deal. It was kind of like, yeah, like, what are you gonna quit? Or are you gonna say, oh no, arm hurts,
Wrist hurts. Sorry.
like, really? That's what's gonna keep you out of wrestling? Like, you've done this since you were fourth grade, fourth grade, and no legs, and got beat up for how many years, and a sore wrist is gonna keep you from wrestling in the state tournament? Like, not a chance.
And at this point, did you have any plans of wrestling beyond that state weekend your senior year?
No, not really. There's weird things that have happened in my life that direct you down a path, um, good, bad, or indifferent. But that was definitely one of them. When I win that match, you realize that you're closer than you think. Back to my analogy of the guy digging in the tunnel. Like everybody's grinding, everybody's working, and you never know when you're going to break through that other side. And when you beat that kid, it's like, that is, I'm a lot closer than I thought I was. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't that much of a fluke. That mentality changes from like, man, I'm lucky to be at the state tournament to like, I can wrestle with anybody in the state. Like, why can't I? And then why can't I go to the next level and wrestle? So that was what springboarded that. And then that same kind of scenario happens in college, my junior year, when I don't qualify, but am winning in the semifinals to go to the finals of the conference tournament. And I'm beating a guy that tech followed me earlier in the year. And if I beat him, and I'm beating him like 6-1, he's at a writing time point, so it's 6-2 maybe. And I lost that match. And I realized and he goes on to get like 4th in the country the next week or week after at D3 Nationals. I said, man, I had that guy dead to rights. Like, they're not that good. I can be there. And I can be there higher than that. Like I had him beat. Like that was mental mistakes on my behalf, and that was all my fault. But if he got 4th, so then that's what mentally springboards you to that next level. Same thing with the Youngblood twin. So
Isn't it crazy how it's truly just what you believe you're capable of?
100%. That's
Like nothing changed in the body, nothing changed in your game. It's just all the mental of it. It's just, it almost makes you frustrated. It's so mental sometimes. You can't even believe how, you know?
Absolutely. It gives me goosebumps because you're right on the money, because it's just exactly what it is. It is. I used to tell people all the time, like, this sport is 90% mental, maybe 80% mental. You got to be physically fit. You got to be strong. You got to know some technique. But man, you have a hungry person that believes in themselves, that isn't going to quit. That kid is hard to beat. And even when you do, you don't want to do it again, and now with our little youth club that I help coach, man, we have kids, and that's what we try to preach. I want fearless kids. I don't care if they win or lose. I want fearless kids that go out there and grind, and when they lose, that kid knows. And honestly, it happened with my oldest son this year at district, man. He's 13, he's an 8th grader, tall, skinny kid. He wrestles because dad makes him wrestle. But he's really pretty good. He's really pretty savvy. He's a pretty good technician. And he's beaten a kid 8-2 in the first round. Actually, had a bye first round. In the second round, he's beaten a kid 8-2. And similar to his old man, got caught on his back. And at that age, got caught on his back and pinned. He's frustrated. I don't give a shit. Whatever, man. But he did awesome. Like, you were beating him bad. How the tournament goes, he wrestles his way all the way back, and he has an opportunity to wrestle the same kid again. And I told him, I said, buddy, that kid pinned you, but he doesn't want to wrestle you again. You were beating the brakes off of him until he pinned you. He doesn't, like, you have to have the mindset and go out there and do work, because he doesn't want to do this again. He feels lucky to get out of that match with a win earlier. Mm-hmm. He surely doesn't want to do it again. And Mason goes out there and pins the kid, takes him down, cool, dominates him, and pins him. And he ends up losing the true wrestle back for 4th. But I don't think he was even cared about that match. He was so excited about avenging that loss from earlier that day. And honestly, it was all between the ears. Mm-hmm. It was right up here that he won that match. And that, to me, that's the biggest win of the day. That's like awesome. Like, way to go, buddy. Like, that is like overcoming it in your brain and believing in your brain, and you walk out there and do that. So
It's awesome to see that, right? Especially with a young person when they go through that and they go through a couple of those moments, and because there's no worse feeling than in middle school at the regionals, the districts, you lose. It's like it doesn't, knowing that there's so many bigger events, but people always say, if you're an eighth grader, the eighth grade state tournament is bigger than the Olympics to you. That is
Mhm.
the thing. So to have it happen there is awesome. And to think back to, just to close the loop on this for folks listening, that state tournament where you broke your wrist, you end up taking the podium. So you get sixth at
Yeah.
the Iowa State tournament with a broken wrist. You go to Simpson College, which is a D3 program in Iowa, and kind of similar to high school, the first 2 years, I think you were like 13, 15, 14, and 16, something like that. Junior
Yeah.
year, you're coming on, and you brought up the moment I couldn't wait to ask you about is your junior year, you're at the conference tournament, and my brother wrestled at Co, and a lot of my friends wrestled at Co. So I know that D3 qualifying tournament in Iowa was brutal. Like, I
It
don't
is.
remember, you had to get finals, you had to win it, whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. You had to
Um,
get final. You had to get finals, and there were some wild cards that got handed out. But my junior year, I hadn't done anything. I mean, I beat some people, but I wasn't in the running for one of those wild card spots. They were getting given to returning All Americans. Um, so for me, I had to make the finals to get a guaranteed bid to nationals my junior year, and I didn't do it, and I didn't go. So
but it's great it happened then versus like your senior year. Like your senior year kind of happened the first round at state when season's almost done and you've had this awakening. Then you get to
mhm.
college and have another great awakening your junior year. What happens after that point? Are you doing self-talk? Are you doing visualization leading into your senior year?
I talk to myself a lot. I read a thing one time that 90% of your conversations are in your own head, not with other people. Um, and so how powerful those are and what those mean. But I used to out loud look in the mirror and repeat national champ to myself. I mean, hundreds of times. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of times. And when you haven't even been to the national tournament and you're repeating national champ in the mirror, it seems really funny. It seems very far fetched and it seems unattainable. But when you start, you say it enough and you say it enough and you're looking in your own eyes and you're looking and you start believing and then you start believing and then it starts getting crazy. I mean, then it starts getting like, this guy's mentally not all there. Like
I
he is
love
not.
that.
And so like you start doing that and like, man, then all of a sudden the people around you, and then you start beating people. Then you go out there with this mindset that nobody can beat me. I can beat anybody. And you start doing that, and then you start actually doing it, and then they're like, "Holy cow!" Like he's possessed, and that is a really scary individual when it comes to anybody. I don't care who it is, and they're gonna accomplish what they're setting out to do.
And so you actually believed it in your core and like in your
Yeah,
fiber.
yeah, unbelievable. I mean, like, in the fact, one of my coolest pieces of memory, like the post-wedding videos where they talk, like, hey, what do you want to tell the married couple? And, their friends and family are all talking. One of the coolest things I have from that whole college and national tournament was my sister-in-law walked around after the national tournament with a recorder, and she went up to, like, my high school coach was there, one of my youth coaches were there, like obviously all my teammates and my parents and in-laws and relations were all, like brother and all these people are there. And she would go up to these people and say, hey, what do you want to say? Oh, this is great. People crying. This is the greatest match I've ever seen. It was awesome. Like said very nice thing. It's a really neat thing to watch. For me, better than watching any wrestling match. But towards the end, she goes up to my two college roommates, Eric Nix and Justin Song. And they're sitting there and like everybody's like excited and jumping up and like all stuff, and they're just sitting there like kind of kicked back. Full disclosure, Nick might have had a big dip in, just sitting there like very unimpressed, arms folded. And she goes, "What do you want to say to Nick? You want to say anything to him?" And I remember I haven't. Eric looks at the camera and he's like, "Well, you said you were going to do it all year, and now you did it, and now we have to listen to you." Like it's the mindset, right? It was like he's absolutely correct. And now I see Eric at little youth tournaments. He helps the Earlham Club, and he's a wonderful guy. And it was the people around you knew what it was. The people that weren't thought it was amazing. Thought it was this overcoming adversity. Thought it was something that was bigger than anything, and that's why the Today Show calls, and that's why all these people, USA Today, and all these things happen. But the reality is the core of the people around you were like, yeah, he's been he's been on a mission, man. This is not a surprise to us. And that is the biggest honor or, thing. They believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
My coaches believed in me. Even sometimes you kind of think, man, they're crazy. And I have one of those kids too, man. Our middle son, he is nuts. But I'll tell you what, I'll take him he's a sixth grader, and he, knock on wood right now, he's going to win the little kid state title in a week, next weekend, the 25th, 26th.
Let's go.
He's going to do it. He is 98 pounds of just craziness. I mean, he is a terrible wrestler. Full disclosure, he is a terrible technician at wrestling, but he will straight murder kids and then help them up. He's the sweetest boy ever, but he's crazy flexible, and his belief in himself is second to none I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they're completely different boys. And then we have a third boy that's younger, but like this middle one is like different than the oldest, not better, not worse, just way different. And then this middle one, man, he walks out there and he's gonna wreck shop, and you are not gonna beat him. And if you do, you better feel real lucky, because he's coming for you next. I mean, like, it's a weird mind, and they're all, and I don't know,
They say though that, all successful people, like like uber successful people, like a Conor McGregor, like a Will Smith, if you listen to enough YouTube videos of these people, they all say that they were so unrealistic. Like, if you're realistic, that's just a path to mediocrity. Exactly.
Yeah.
So these guys are so out there in their beliefs in a good way that a lot of their friends, sometimes think maybe they're losing it. Like, you're quitting your job. What are you thinking, man? But I think the core of it though is you have that belief, but also the amount of work you're probably putting in to back it up is also, like, now it's being driven by a new passion. So I'm curious, you have that moment your junior year, you have some real, inner moments, and you start to change your self-talk, change your visualization. What kind of work are you putting in with that? Were you doing like swims, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I swam a lot, airdyne biked a lot, wrestled a lot. And, just like pig farming, the kind of blessing in disguise, there were often times that for conditioning, they're going to go run, they're going to put your gym shoes on and go to the field house, and they're going to do big sprints in this big gym. And oftentimes, I can run fine, but it doesn't really condition me like other things do. Swimming is a better conditioner for me, or like I said, airdyne bike. But oftentimes somebody'd hang back and we'd just wrestle. One of the assistant coaches, one of the student assistant guys that just graduated, I don't know if Corey was still sticking around then, but I would just wrestle. Like, how are you going to get in shape? They have two coaches, that just graduated a couple years ago, that would just beat on me for 15 minutes while these guys were down, and the whole rest of the team was down in the gym running.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so this kind of happy accident of just having to wrestle a lot, I just wrestled a lot. I mean, there was a lot of mat time in that year. There was a lot of weight training. I was as strong as an ox, and I was healthy. And I say it to this day, if you can get a kid or an athlete healthy into the state tournament, they're going to do well. Most of these kids are so beat up, and even at the college level, right? Like, they're kids because I'm old, but like, they're beat up. And if you can get a healthy, hungry wrestler in there, they can do really well. So I was really healthy. I didn't ever, knock on wood, had zero injuries in college wrestling.
That's really the Ben Askren approach, though. He's big on that. Like, he didn't do a lot of cross training. He just wrestled to get in shape. And it makes so much sense when you hear about it. It's not like a runner is wrestling to get in shape. The runner's running to get in shape, right? It's specific to the sport, obviously, right? And I think there's something to be said for running and getting in your head and just having, some extra motivation. But man, you think about all the time that's spent doing that stuff, maybe it would be better suited just wrestling.
Yeah, you just wrestle, and it doesn't have to be some of the old school stuff, and it's changed a lot now since I was there, but like that old school mentality of having that room, so hot, and you're sluggish wrestling, and you're kind of rolling around just trying to sweat. That's not productive wrestling. Like, you need that temperature to be at an ideal level. You need to be able to move. You need to be able to move when you're tired. You need to be able to work through those positions when you're tired, and then keep improving every position, which seems obvious, but when we want to really get into shape, well, golly, what's going to burn the lungs like sprinting, killers in the gym? Well, okay, but man, you're missing out on precious hours in time. There's so much time in the day. There's so much time in your high school career. There's so much time in your college career, and that's a finite number, and that ends at a certain time. And if you can do something that is benefiting what you're doing, I think that's going to be beneficial. It was beneficial for me, I think so.
And you talk about at one point in your career, just letting my mom in through my door buzzer. At one point in your career, I think it was your senior year, you had a big breakthrough where you realized how to wrestle when you were really, really, really tired. And maybe it wasn't something that happened once or it was an epiphany, but it sounds like it was a big moment in your development.
Absolutely. You gotta, it's just like that with everything. Like when you figure out that the coincidence between keeping working and success are correlated, as soon as you figure that out, the sooner you figure that out, the better you are. Like nobody gets really good at anything because they are tired of going to practice. Like I get it. Like I think it's a balance. I think I'm not a year-round wrestling advocate. I just am not from a personal standpoint. Like our kids will never do it. I don't advocate for it. I'm sure it's for some people, but it's not for me. But like if you got like if you're just working, you don't have to be wrestling. You don't have to be doing it. You got to be just working. And as soon as you figure out, man, this work that I'm putting in today is paying off tomorrow. And I saw that image or a graph of this hockey stick. Like it's not like if the X and Y axis, and the more you work, the more successful you get. It's not that at all. It's like the shape of a laying down hockey stick where you have to work for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden it sweeps up.
Yep.
And that's when you start getting successful. So nowadays, kids nowadays, not jumping on that bandwagon. I think kids work their tail off nowadays, but we have to, youth coaches, parents, whoever you're talking about, have to instill that this instant gratification of working hard. Man, I lost every single match. My boys are winning all kinds of matches and are bummed that they lose. I'm like, I like that you don't like to lose. I mean, I can't teach you that. And I'm really excited that you hate to lose. That is a great mind to have.
Yeah.
We gotta channel that somehow. And so as soon as you're able to do that, that's when you start finding that, man, the more work I put in, the more successful I am. And that means the more work I put in wrestling, the better I am at football. Or the more I put in with football, the better I am at wrestling or track. I do track, and next thing you know, I do basketball, and next thing you know, I'm really good at track. Those are all correlations, like that all have to do with putting in work. You don't get to be a really good track runner by not doing work in the off season. And it doesn't have to be track.
You're big on the multi-sport.
100%, man. That's it. I believe in it, man. I think at some point you got to narrow it down, and it's hard for me to say. I probably feel like a hypocrite by saying that, because I mean, I did all sports till I was a freshman in high school. And then I stopped all sports after junior high and just focused on wrestling. But I played basketball and football and everything all the way through junior high, track. I think at some point you got to kind of narrow that down and focus that down. But you also got to understand what your body's doing and what your body's telling you. And most of the time you got to listen to that, and you got to listen to what you're going to do genetically. And man, maybe if you quit one sport because you don't think you're the starting player, but 2 years later you're a foot taller than everybody else, maybe you should have stuck with that,
right.
Like,
and I think it's big too if I say this all the time, so I feel like a broken record, but if it's the kid driving it, like let's say you're after middle school, right? Multi-sports up until middle school, freshman year of high school, the kid's coming to you and like begging to wrestle all year round, or any sport or any activity. I think it's a little different, right? Whereas if it's being driven from an outside source, it's not as productive, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like that, that becomes the conversation of like, okay, you're not going to do this, but what are you going to do?
Right.
It's not going to be nothing. It's not going to be no work. It's going to be, now we're going to do some sort of performance training or plyometric training or CrossFit training or something that's going to fill that gap that's going to help you. But I get it. You don't want to keep wrestling. It's a long season. It's a long sport. You don't want to, or whatever it is. But I agree. I think it's kid driven for sure when you get closer to that high school time frame. I battle with parents and stuff all the time, and I don't mean battle in a bad way, but I mean, I say, well, I don't want to force my kids to wrestle, and I say, well, we do, and not my wife. My wife is pretty bad. Whatever whatever they want to do, it's fine with her, and that's great. And that's why she's mom, and that's why they love her. But like,
I'm gonna say, how'd you get her on board with that one? That policy?
Well, it's because this is it. I'll tell you, and it's hard to argue with it. I think it's pretty flawless, but I'm sure there's a lot of holes in it. I think like you force your kid to wrestle through junior high the same way you force them to read, do math, do science, go to school, all of those things. Not because you expect them to be an English major or write books or be a mathematician or be a teacher, or you don't have your kids do those things for a specific reason other than to make them a better person. Right. Like when you think about the title of your podcast, right? Like you are going through wrestling from third, fourth grade, and some kids start sooner. We have pre-KK kids in our club now that run all the way through 8th grade, but you're wrestling from 3rd grade to 8th grade to become a better human, to learn how to work hard, to learn how to not be afraid of conflict or struggles or not feeling great, to understand what it means to really grind and to figure out how to work yourself out of problems. And the same reason that you force your kids to, when they get home from school, to do homework and read, and the same reason you force them to do their homework and math is the same reason I make them wrestle, and that is because they're going to learn how to read. They'll be fine. We're doing this because it's making them better people, and that's just my own kind of crazy mindset. And so when I talk to all the kids and all the parents in our community where I live, I'm like, oh, he doesn't really want to wrestle this year. I'm like, he's like, I feel weird kind of forcing him to, but I really wish he would. I'm like, well, you can force him to. Like you make him go to school. Does he ever wake up in the morning and say, man, I can't wait to go to school? No, he gets home. You say, hey, Johnny, do you want to do homework? He's like, no, they never say the yes, but you make them do it because it's the right thing to do, because it's making them better. It's easy.
And then you hope they like it enough they keep wrestling in high school. That's the
well, and maybe they don't.
Right.
I'm probably I'm at right now. I'm probably, if I were guessing my own kids, I'm probably at 60% chance. I would bet my oldest doesn't wrestle in a high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% okay with that. Meaning like I definitely don't live vicariously. I feel like that you see that all the time too. That vicariously living through the kids, like their success is dad's success. That is a brutal misconception. Those should be like child abuse cases. Like I had my success. I don't need your success. Meaning like if you're successful in the sport and you love it, great.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to just get stronger and figure out like how to be uncomfortable and work through that, because that is more important to you long term than this outside single that you're really good at. But yeah, so I don't know.
I think it's fascinating, and I at first you hear it and you hear someone makes their kids wrestle and maybe there's a negative connotation, but the way you broke it down right there and the way you don't put a big focus on the results as much as the effort, it makes sense. And
no, results never matter, like ever. Like and it's not because everybody gets a ribbon. I'm not in that camp either, right? You got to earn success and you got to work hard. Not everybody gets a ribbon. I don't know. I don't believe in that. But I also don't care if you win or lose. Like I had a real tough conversation with our 9-year-old this year after a match because he quit in the match. He just was flailing, and the kid was better than him, and he was going to get beat by him either way. And he came back and was actually doing really well, and then he's got in terrible position, and he got pinned, and I was so upset with him. Not because he lost, and he knows that, and my wife, everybody around me knows that I don't care about that stuff. I care about effort, and it's like, and that's honestly, you brought up Ben Askren's name earlier. That's exactly where I get some of this stuff from. But also when I read or see some of his stuff or listen to some of his stuff, I'm like, man, he's right on the money. Same, we have a parallel vision of that. Like I don't care about wins and losses. Like I want him to be fearless, and I want him to go out there and just give her hell, and we'll teach you how to wrestle, but we can't ever quit. And that's it. I mean, that's all there's to it.
Your mindset is one of those 1%er mindsets, and that's why you had, I'm guessing, the success you had. And if we get to, we haven't hit on this yet, but no interview with Nick Ackerman would be complete without touching on this amazing 2001 NCAA tournament. And I think it'd be a good way to wind it down, because so if we kind of pull back to wrestling,
Yep.
Your junior year, you have that moment. Your senior year, you're in the zone. You're telling everyone you're going to win nationals. You get to the nationals. Was that a struggle to get there, or is it you got there and you were feeling pretty good going into the nationals?
I got there. I wouldn't say I got there easy, meaning like it's always worked, but it wasn't hard. I got to the conference finals and wrestled Rob Murray in the conference finals. It's televised on Iowa Public Television, and win or lose, I'm going to the national tournament, and that tournament was tough. The couple weeks before was the conference duels, and I lost to Zach Gordon from Co and Rob Murray from Loris, both of them in the conference duels. A couple weeks later was the conference tournament, and that was I was on Zach Gordon and Rob Murray were on the same side of the bracket, and Rob knocked Zach off. So I made my way to the finals against Rob. Never had to wrestle Zach at the conference tournament, but I lost him in the conference finals.
And so you lose the conference finals.
Yeah, lose the conference. Okay. Yeah, so I lost twice I lost twice in conference duels, and then the next couple weeks later in the conference finals I lost to him in the finals. But either way, you're going to the national tournament, and then at the national tournament that was a pretty fun couple day or a few day event that
so people need to realize this. Even up until 2 weeks before the nationals, you're still hitting some speed bumps. You drop 2 at the conference duel, you drop 1 at the conference, and you get to the nationals, and this guy from Nick Slack, 60-match win streak. He's, I'm guessing who everyone was picking to win it. How are people giving? What chances are people giving you at this point?
I was a 7. I think I was a 7 seed in the tournament, so 0. I have to go through a lot of really good guys just to make the finals. And if you make the finals, you're wrestling the defending national champ, who at that time, up to that tournament he was 60. So through that tournament he's 63-0 when I wrestle him, and just dominating people. And so I go to this. I win the first round. Second round is against Rob Murray. Because the quarterfinals against Rob Murray the first day of the tournament, the 2-day tournament. So I have to beat this guy who's beat me the last 2 times. And we wrestle to a 0-0 match on the scoreboard, and he had a riding time point. I think it was maybe the first time I was ridden my senior year, or gave up a point for riding time. It was, I kind of had that figured out, but he had done better than I did for sure, and was putting it to me. And then with like 26 or 25 seconds left in the third period, same thing, near wrist. I get him to step, and instead of a heel pick, I loop around to an outside single, and have an outside single head on the inside, and I circle around behind him, cut across to the far ankle, and with like 7 or 8 seconds left, I catch the far ankle, pull it in, and ride him for a few seconds to win 2-1, as the scoreboard would read. And then I'm on the right side of the bracket going into day 2 of the national tournament. So that was honestly as big a win as the national tournament for me, to avenge that loss that I just lost to.
Really?
I mean, that was a
Wow.
huge. In fact, I remember not sleeping that night, jumping up and down like on my bed, thinking, I can't believe I just beat Rob Murray. Like, that guy's a stud, and he's had my number, and I just beat him. And I was so excited,
Wow.
and so then you go into day 2. It was an odd side of the bracket. If you look at the bracket, the guy who I should have wrestled in the semis, injury defaulted out of the tournament. So I have no semis match, which is like super weird, first of all.
So you're
And
in the finals.
so I'm in the finals. I'm in the finals, and we're gonna see who I'm wrestling, and you kind of know who it's gonna be. But I was in a weird place in my mind, and a very irrational. When you start beating people, it doesn't matter. And I say it to the kids nowadays. I don't care what the number of the seed is. I don't care if you're supposed to win or you're not supposed to win. People are ready to be done, and give them a reason to fold up and go home. And man, my coach Peterson, I just saw him the other night. Halfway through the season, he'd start, I'd shake my hand before I'd walk out there. He'd slap me in the face, and he'd say, "Nobody beats Nick Ackerman." Like, that's right. I'd turn around, and I'd walk out there on the mat and do work. But he did that, and I turned around. I remember looking at that guy and thinking, "Holy cow, he's big!" Like, he had these little ankles and his big, huge shoulders, and I remember thinking, "Holy cow, this guy's big." And there's no way we're the same weight class. And I kind of laughed. I think I probably did laugh. I was like, "Oh, well, this is gonna be fun. Here we go." And you walk out there, and I take a shot, take a high crotch, and he steps around. I don't get it very well, and he steps around, and they give him 2, probably before they probably should have, but it was fine. They gave him 2. He draped a hand over, and his knee was there, and I took him for a ride on a little Peterson roll that I would do. They hang their hand over the side. I'd switch from a high crotch and scoop that back leg, and I can just sit my feet or my legs right underneath of me, and I put him onto his back for 5, reversal and near fall, and then tilted him up for another cheap 3. And so at the end of the first period, I'm beating the defending national champ 8-2.
Crazy.
Yes. It was like,
I couldn't tell if it was a Grammy or how you got into it, but it looked like it was like a Grammy Peterson type situation. I didn't know, where you were at before that, but
yeah, I was in on a high crotch, and he's draped over the top of me, and he steps his left leg around kind of behind where it would be between my feet, and he wraps his arm around my waist. And so that's 2, right? They give him, even though I have the leg out here, they give him that 2. And so I kind of shimmy a little bit, and then just like wait till he sinks this arm over my side, and as soon as he trapped that, reverse the arm and reverse leg, put him on his back, and that was 5, and then like I said, 3 more, and then the wheels kind of started shaking. We're going down the road pretty quick, and honestly, I attribute it to the night before, being up all night thinking about winning, beating Rob Murray, and thinking about like, holy cow, like this is happening. Like, and I was in good shape as anybody in the country, but man, late in that national finals, there was nothing I could do right. But
so you were gassing
I was gassing, but I was taking shots. I like couldn't stop from attacking. So I would shoot in, and he would snap block spin, and he'd get around behind. I couldn't stop his front headlock moves, and he was just faster and stronger and better than I was. But he'd let me up. He had to. He was down, 8-4 now, or whatever it was. Yeah, 9-4, and then he just is stair stepping this takedown escape up, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. And I can't stop shooting. Like, what I should have done is just square up and circle and bang a little bit, fake shots. I should have done something. But honestly, I think it was because if I back up to my junior year in the conference semifinals, to go to national, I did that. I stopped. I'm beating this guy 6-1 or whatever it was. I can hold out here,
Right.
and I give up 2 stalling calls and a takedown out of bounds, and I lose. Well, that's not happening again. So I'm just pounding as hard as I can. I don't care. I'm taking you down again. And it didn't work. He scored. He brought it all the way back, and then he was like 13-11, and I got a hold of the near wrist, and I got him to step, and I sunk in. Maybe I crossed. I don't know. Whatever it was. I remember hooking in, and like having this in, and I was outside. So, I had it in, and I remember I couldn't see the clock. I wasn't looking for it, but I felt the air go out of him. I felt him just go like on my back. Like I grabbed that leg, I sucked it in. I wasn't even close to finishing it, but it wasn't going to go anywhere. And I felt him just kind of wind come out like, man, time's up. And then they patted us both, and time was over. And that was
What emotions were you feeling in that moment?
Man, I don't know. Pretty happy, obviously. Relieved isn't the right word. I don't know if I had. I'm not a very emotional person. I don't know. I just remember thinking like, holy cow! Like I can't believe this is over. This just happened. I'm not a very religious person. Not that I'm not. I grew up going to Catholic church, and I'm not anti-religion by any means, but I remember, like I always used to, and I still do now, would pray to family members that were passed, not like God, because I thought, shoot, he's going to help everybody. Like, why is he going to help me more than that guy? Like, hope we're both safe. But I'd always kind of talk to past family members, and so I remember thinking that for sure. That was kind of like, I remember leaning back and like, holy cow, like we did this. This is the thing we did. And get up like you've been there before and, go celebrate.
I think you, I may be misremembering this, but one of the interviews I listened to, you said that someone, or whether your coach or a family member, said, it's the best moment of your life, greatest night of your life. And you go, I hope not.
I do. Yeah. I
Which
remember
is
that.
like-
I remember that. I saw that guy the other day too. Actually, I saw him just the other night, last night, Wednesday. Nick, this is gonna be the greatest night of your life. And I remember that was after that match. We were going doing interviews. He came up and he said, man, I hope not. Like, because the reality is, if that's it, like,
shit, yeah,
all downhill from here. Like,
right. It's just go ahead.
Yeah, it's exactly, what you realize is it's not even close to anything, meaning in real life, right? Like, think about your kids, you think about your family, you think about all the things that are really important, and you think, man, wrestling is a big part of that, and it's absolutely changed my life in a way that I feel like I'll never have the opportunity to repay. Like, everybody feels that way. Everybody that's wrestled, if they said they didn't feel this way, I don't know if I'd have much time for them. Meaning, like, it's given everybody more than they will ever give back to it. You think about the amount of time, if you've wrestled for any time in your life, the amount of time your coaches put into you, and the amount of time your parents hauled you around to places, and the amount of time that they put up with you cutting weight and your terrible attitude, and they put up with all of these things and sitting in a gym and all this stuff. And this sport, what it has taught me and what it has taught so many others is that, you whatever those lessons are, you will never repay it. You will never give back to the sport what it is given to you, period.
Perfect way to wind this down. Nick Ackerman, you have been a gem to have on the podcast today, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate you.
Now that we have it on record, that DVD series, it's going to happen in the next year or so. If someone's listening who's got a production company in Des Moines, let's make it happen. Shoot me a message on Instagram. If not, I'll come out and do it myself. And that would just be life-changing for someone to have that, and just somehow get it to like the coaches association and give it out to everyone so they have it, like, just boom, that's got to happen. And I think
Yeah, it's got to be digital. It's got to be easy.
maybe even
It's so
YouTube. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
you have yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the reality is this: I don't need $1 from it. I don't. Not that I have a job that I work at, and I don't want. I mean, I want to impact kids and help coaches, not make $1 from it. So let's figure it out
yeah.
and let's get it done.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for
Appreciate
coming
your
on the
time, man.
podcast. Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it.